Good afternoon from the set of Jaws. Insiders confirm the shark still isn't working.
Cut! Just stop! We know already. Okay, the shark didn't work most of the time. Fine, but everybody's heard that story a million times. Let's give them the stories they haven't heard.
Director, actor, screenwriter par excellence.
Okay.
Who has written also the Jaws log and who came on to this show 3 weeks before shooting. Carl Gottlieb. And on my left is my dear old friend Joe Alves, who designed Jaws, he designed Close Encounters, he worked with Hitchcock, all of them. And Joe came on this movie way before Steven was ever hired to direct this movie. Joe Alves.
First hired, first fired.
Exactly.
Those are the actors, last hired.
Yeah, right.
And I think we're going to start it off, and we're going to try to take you in as chronological an order as possible. But we're going to start to talk about the Hollywood movie system in 1974 when this movie was shot. And Carl and Joe, being much older than I am,
Yes.
are quite able to talk about this.
Right.
In those days, studios were kind of in their last feeble efforts as machinery for making entertainment. They had hit their heyday in the 30s and the 40s. In the 50s, as the 50s came to a close, we saw several developments, that of television, of course, and lesser known, and the much lesser known Paramount consent decree, which prevented theater owners from owning studios, which is how the studio system grew. People who owned movie theaters needed product to put on the screen, and they figured if they hired actors and directors and producers and composers and editors and cameramen and gave them guaranteed 52 weeks of employment a year, put them under contract, or hired them as workers in the factory environment, they could produce a reliable and steady flow of what was referred to in those days as product. And I remember when I started in the business in 1960, I was reviewing films for an exhibitor magazine, and the job of a reviewer when you were writing for theater owners was you said what kind of a movie and where would it play. There were no such things as bad films. There were just films that would play first run downtown big theaters, and there were action films.
Yeah, the B movies.
And there were the B movies. There were the black and white westerns and like that. And in the studio system, everybody worked all the time, and you went from job to job. And at Universal Studios, which was a triumph of the factory system, there was an institution, and common to all studios, known as the charge number.
Yeah.
And when you were an official production, once the studio said we're going to make this picture, you got a charge. I swear I'm not doing anything except talking. You got a charge number, and that number was the official bookkeeping record of the entire movie. Everything that was spent on the movie was charged to a number. Well, Jaws was just a concept. It was a novel that was about to come out, and it didn't have a charge number. But Zanuck and Brown had an office at Universal, and Joe worked at Universal.
Yes.
And he was led to it by the studio system.
And in the studio system, unlike today, you want to be a production designer, you don't start as a production. You start as either a junior set designer, which is sort of a draftsman, or a junior illustrator. And you bounce around. Last to be hired, first to be fired. And I bounced around from MGM, worked on Mutiny on the Bounty, My Fair Lady at Warner Brothers, Fox, And I sort of then got rooted in Universal as a set designer. I was fortunate to work on It's a Mad, Mad World. And then I got elevated to, I got elevated to assistant art director and was fortunate to work with Alfred Hitchcock on Torn Curtain. But by the same token, you could be working with Hitchcock a few months later when they didn't have features, you'd be working on McHale's Navy or, you know, the Virginian, Marcus Welby. In any case, I proceeded on and I was very fortunate to get a television series called Night Gallery, Rod Serling. And I met a number of young directors there, Steven Spielberg, John Badham, Janot Schwark. And so in any case, I met Steven on that, did a couple television shows with him, and then he did his first feature with Sugar Land Express. And I got to know Dick Zanuck very well. And Dick, for the first time, who was an executive, president, what, at 28 years old at Fox?
Yeah.
From his father. Anyway, but on Sugarland, he was boots on the ground. He traveled, we scouted all over. So we became friends. Long story short. Dick and David bought a book called Jaws. And I'm sure this is what they figured. We need some sketches to show the studio, to sell the studio, or what this is going to be. It's going to be a big shark movie, not a cheap shark movie. So I'm sure Dick said, look, we don't have a charge number, but Joe's at the studio. He's probably doing a television movie. He'll do the sketches for nothing. And I did. And so they got me cheap. So we used the sketches, 24 of them. You'll see some of them around. And we had a major meeting. Spielberg by this time had signed on. We had the head of the effects department. We had all these departments, like Carl said, we were very departmentized. Editorial, camera, art department, and they had heads. They used to get credits whether they worked on the movie or not. They just headed the department. In any case, so we had this meeting, and after the meeting, the effects department said, we can't do this. It's going to take 2 years at least to make the shark. Besides, we have bigger movies like Earthquake and The Hindenburg. And Marshall Green, who was the head of production, got really mad. He said, Jaws could be a bigger movie than The Hindenburg. And everybody sort of laughed. And anyway, as the meeting was breaking up, he called me back. He said, Joe, you think you could get the shark bait? And naturally, with a lot of confidence, absolutely. So I went out.
What was he going to say?
What else was I going to say? It was a great opportunity. And Spielberg and I always talked about, you know, if we're going to do a shark, we're not going to do any miniatures. We're going to do full-size shark in the real ocean. So I went about checking it out, and Disney said they couldn't do it, take a year or so. And I found Bob Matty, and he was very confident. And then we found the Magnificent Seven. We found Roy Arbogast, Richie Hemmer, and those guys. And we started to make the shark. And I will show you those pictures and drawings later.
Yeah, but as he was starting to make the shark, and trust me, everybody else said to him it'd take a year, 2 years to build this shark. He got Bob Matty, who was really brilliant in many, many ways.
Oh, yes.
And they do this, and then Joe had to find where he was going to shoot this movie.
Yes. Let me stand up here a second. I met with Peter Benchley. Do we have the I would like New England, please.
We're all leading to why the Vineyard.
Yes, well, we'll get to that when we get to... in any case, I met with Peter Benchley in New York, and I said, Peter, do you have any specific place in mind? And he said, first I have to find it on the... We had it up, Rich. Anyway, he said, it's coming. We like these delays. You got anything to say that why we're delaying? So I met in New York, and he said, you know, Montauk, Sag Harbor, Stonington, Marblehead. He wasn't quite sure. He just sort of had a feeling for the area. So I went, this was in December of 1973, and I went through the Hamptons here and took pictures in the snow of beaches. And I went all through this area. I ended up as far as Portland, Maine, down to Marblehead. So he said, go to Nantucket, and my mother will give you cream cheese and cucumber sandwiches. Very good. And I went there, and she did. But anyway, on my way from Woods Hole, it was so rough that they turned around and came back. So I said, let's see, because I asked him, well, what about this Martha's Vineyard? I had a whole map of the area. He said, I don't think there's anything there. So, but I had no choice because I had some time and the ferry was going. So I went to Martha's Vineyard, and it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. I mean, Edgartown was this beautiful picket fence. It's a perfect, beautiful, pristine town that a shark could destroy. And then you have Menemsha, and my thinking when I saw it, I was a big fan of David Lean's, and I said, oh my God, David Lean would have built this whole thing, and I don't have to build it, just Quint Shack at the end, you know. So, and then we were looking for a specific water, and I'll show you later on the sketches. We needed a depth for the platform shark of about 25 feet, and we needed a small tide change. And so right there, Nantucket Sound there, right off of the beach, was perfect. I have one interesting story. When Matt Taylor was doing the book, the Jaws book, Martha's Vineyard, I said, when I landed in Vineyard Haven, it was so cold, I went to the first hotel, the only hotel was open. And I remember being an OSC fan, O.J. Simpson was running for 200 yards to break the record of 2,000 yards in one season. Matt looked it up, he says, that was December 17th, 1973. That's when we liked O.J. before he killed his wife. But I mean, it was amazing. So that's my first time on the vineyard, September 17th, 1973.
So that brings us up to the shooting, and now we're going to bring Carl up to date on when we begin shooting.
Stephen and I were friends. We hung out. I worked in 2 of his television films as an actor. And he was talking about the script that he was thinking of doing.
This is important. Are we all on?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Okay. Am I on now? Yeah. Okay. Stephen and I were friends. I had acted in a couple of his television movies. We, my wife and I were kind of showing him around L.A. He was new in town. And I can tell you briefly that Stephen was so new in town that he took his first big paychecks. He got a new car, like everybody does when they get their first big movie paycheck. And Stephen's idea of a cool car was exactly what you would want as a cool car if you came from Phoenix, Arizona, and were 26 years old. He had an orange Pontiac Firebird with a spoiler. And then he took a look around and said, everybody else has got Mercedes.
Yeah, right. And he bought that beautiful, nice little 280.
And he got a little 220.
220.
And the Pontiac Firebird out the window. And he was going to do this movie, a script called Jaws. And he said, you know, it would be great if you came on location. There's a part, you know, can you find a part in the script for yourself that you would play? And I read the script and I counted lines the way all actors do, and I said, okay, police chief, that's not, you know, you got somebody for that? Yeah. I said, well, how about Meadows, the publisher of the paper? So Stephen said, great. And he said, well, you're on for the run of the picture. You're going to be there 6-8 weeks. That's as long as we're going to be shooting in Martha's Vineyard. And you can help with the crowd scenes and throw out some comedy lines, and because I've been working as a comedy writer. And I said, sounds great, you know, 8 weeks in location, getting, you know, Screen Actors Guild pay. And then he said, well, and then he sent me the script and wrote on the cover of the script, eviscerate it, tear it apart. So I wrote a memo saying, well, here's what I would do, you know, if I were working on this script, here's what I don't like, here's what I like. And I remember writing in that memo in 1974, if we do our jobs right, people will feel about going in the ocean the way they felt about taking a shower after Psycho. And it turns out to have been oddly prescient. And Stephen showed this memo to Zanuck and Brown, and they were having, all three of them were having breakfast at the Bel Air Hotel, and they called me at home on a Sunday, because they were going to leave for Martha's Vineyard in Boston casting that next week. They said, can you come out and talk about the script, because you have some ideas that we'd like to discuss. So I went out. It was kind of like, where do you get a writer on a Sunday? Kind of a conversation. And then we started talking about the script, and obviously there was a lot that needed to be done. So they said, all right, can you come on for a week as a writer and do a dialogue polish, kind of punch it up, add a few jokes, make the characters a little more, you know, human, you know, because they were kind of cardboard. And I said, yeah, sure. So I signed a 1-week contract for dialogue polish. Quit my job writing comedy for The Odd Couple. I was the story editor on The Odd Couple with Tony Randall and Jack Klugman. And that Tuesday, made the offer on Monday. We signed the deal on Tuesday. Wednesday, we were on a plane to Boston. We were casting extras where we saw Jeffrey, among other people. And I started rewriting the movie. And at that point, we still didn't have the part of Quint cast, and we didn't have the part of Hooper cast.
But they were out casting it, and some people say that my mother wrote a note. My mother, who's sitting over here, is 90 years old, wrote a note to Shari Rhodes. She says no.
The problem, when I presented Martha's Vineyard, went back and showed photographs of beaches in the snow, but I was very enthusiastic. And Stephen and Bill Gilmore and I came out, and we went to Marblehead because Brian De Palma, or someone of Stephen's friends at the time, you know, had a lot of influence on, go to Marblehead, and, you know, okay, but I had been there. But then we came to the Vineyard, and everybody was, so this was the place. We got back, and Richard Zanuck, who didn't exactly come from a poor family, you would say, his father, you know, running or owning Fox Studios, Dick had some trepidation about the island. Number one, the wealthy people that lived here, Walter Cronkite, McNamara, you know, a number of people, right, guys? And then, of course, the Kennedy thing. So he was concerned about that. On the flip side, we had a number of people that could use work. And I brought a painter and a carpenter, and I used everybody else local. I used, imagine, I used boat builders to build boats. Very un-studio.
Totally un-Hollywood.
No, very un-Hollywood. And Quint Shack, and all those things that we built. And Ward Welton, who was a great Hollywood painter. And you paint differently. You paint sometimes an object, and it's got to look 40, 50 years old, and they have techniques. So I think, and then of course, the sales point was Bob Carroll. Bob Carroll and Bill Gilmore, and that sort of really got into the merchant. And then
Bob Carroll was just opening the Kelly House.
Yeah.
It was mortgaged to the hilt. He was opening it, and he thanked God for Universal Pictures.
Well, what about casting some of the locals, huh, guys?
Dr. Nevin. All of the Kronigs were in the beach scene. It was some heady time.
But the selectmen weren't easy with us.
Well, you had a problem in Menemsha. And by the way, while Joe is fighting these fights, Carl is sitting alone in a cabin in Edgartown.
We had different dynamics. Carl had a dynamic. He's in the log cabin. I'm out trying to coordinate with the shark and building things and building in Menemsha. This was an empty lot with weeds and trash. And the selectmen went through a huge big deal. And I had to go to Boston to get one permit. I had to get the permit here from the selectmen. Finally, I got it okay. And I was putting 2 pylons into the water, and I had a big rig, and I was ready to set it down. And this guy taps me on the shoulder. He says, do you have a permit? I said, oh, I've got all these permits. No, to go into the water. I'm going that far into the water. You need some other kind of permit. I said, what will happen? Well, you know, they'll make you tear it down. I said, well, how long will that take? Oh, it could be 6, 7 months. I said, go ahead, guys.
And the Quince Shack, which was a set, they required us to build it to code.
Oh, yeah.
So the plumbing and the wiring, you could live there.
I know they objected to the height, you know, and I said, no, you know, you don't understand.
It's temporary.
It's temporary. It's an illusion.
It'll be gone when we're gone.
It's an illusion.
They made us post a $500,000 bond.
Yes.
That they would tear it down after the show was over.
And the billboard.
And the billboard. Now, how much would that have been worth if it had stayed up as a tourist attraction?
You know, I think it actually has something to do with the island trust to outsiders coming in here and doing their thing. I ran a theater here in the 60s called the Vineyard Players. And evidently, the theaters before us had come in, done a season, sold tickets for the previous year, and never came back. And I think that was kind of the mindset of the Vineyards.
Right.
To off-islanders coming and trying to do their magic.
A Hollywood company on location is kind of like an invading army. And you can sometimes the citizens will welcome you because you're liberating the citizens economically. And sometimes the citizens treat you as Huns and warlords who are going to pillage and take their daughters. and both of those things are true.
Yeah, right. As best as you can. But people that don't make movies don't understand what we're doing. Someone made a film last year, made it many years, but they showed it last year, and I got a little upset because the guy was berating us. Why would you build a bicycle shop in Edgartown when there's a bicycle shop in Oak Bluff? Well, you know what it costs to move a company from Oak Bluff to Edgartown to do a shot of a bicycle? I mean, it's absurd. It's easier to put up a signed bicycle shop, put some bicycles in front. But it's the kind of thinking. Why would you build a boat when you have so many boats? Because Quint is a character, and he needed a character boat. A boat that fit this unusual fisherman. You know, that's why we do things.
Well, and not only all of the buildings and all of the problems that were going on, Joe had to make a shark.
You want to talk about making the shark. I'm glad you said why the shark didn't work. Can we get... Yes.
Yeah.
And my mic just fell off.
And it's dark, you can't find it. No? Here, take mine.
No. Did it fall? It fell. So we need the DVD number 2. And you have, where's the other part of it? Oh, here. We like these little pauses. Okay.
Smooth professional production. This is show business at its finest, ladies and gentlemen. Highly paid technicians working overtime to ensure the smooth, seamless operation.
They do this on television too, but only they cut in between. Okay, part 1, play. What I'm going to show you. Okay, am I all right? All right, these are the sketches I talked about. Are we all right? Okay, these are the sketches I talked about I did for nothing. And they were concepts based on the book. Early on, shortly after Zanuck and Brown bought the book, they sent me the book, and I did these charcoal sketches, rough idea. There's Chrissy, and actually they end up. Chrissy looks like Chrissy, but the little kitten boy. This one everybody gets a kick out. We didn't quite do this. Actually, I directed this scene, but it didn't look like that. pretty soon, here it comes. I wish we had gotten this shot, but we didn't get this shot. But where we go? That's it. Oh, poor kid. Used to see what comes after. But, yeah, oh, God. All right. Anyway, keep rolling. What's happening? We don't want to stop on this. Hello? You got it? Okay. Clay, I didn't want to stop. Okay. So then this is a... Anyway, these scenes are quite different. And I hadn't researched sharks, so it really ends up looking more like Moby Dick. I had the harpoon being thrown and all that stuff. But it was, as I told you, it was to sell the studio what we were going to do. And we'll talk about this later, because that's maybe some of the real sharks that we got in. Okay, could you stop here a second? No, actually, go ahead. We'll finish this up. Just keep going.
Is there a chance that we could move the speakers someplace?
Well, the speakers are this
All right,
way.
wait a minute. You want me here?
We have to stand like away from them.
How about we move, can we move forward
Yeah,
toward the
we're
audience?
gonna have, yeah.
All right.
All right.
The feedback is coming.
Sorry about these problems.
Yeah,
Okay.
that should help.
Okay. So here we are. So see, anyway, this looks like Moby Dick. So if we could proceed, get through these illustrations. And as I say, these are the ones that we showed in Mark Green's office. And then the response we got. Is this on hold? Can we move it? Rich, what's the problem? Okay. All right, I got to talk this way, but I got to look there. Okay. What is happening? We obviously rehearsed this very well. Okay. So quite different, but it got the studio actually a little concerned about doing this kind of thing. And then when Carl rewrote it, it had quite a different feeling. But now stop here a second. Okay, when we got the okay, then I started working with an ichthyologist, Leonard Campagno, who is now very, very big. He was featured in Smithsonian Magazine last year. And I did this 4-foot shark out of clay, and he came along and detailed it for me, so we had an absolute perfect 12-foot shark. And a 12-foot shark is probably the best shape. As they get bigger, they get girthier and not as attractive. So we wanted sort of a sleek, big machine. Okay, we could proceed. So that's the starting of what the shark was going to look like. Okay, let's just stop here for a second. Now, I had to sell the size to the studio. And the thing about studio executives, you don't give them what you want, you give them what you sort of want. And so I made a 20-foot shark and a 30-foot shark drawing. It was down in the basement of the garage. And what we really felt was a 25-foot shark would be the proper size. So they would say, oh, it's like, you know, 3 little bears. Oh, this one's too small, oh, that one's too big, this is perfect. And so perfect was what we got, was 25 feet. Okay, we can move on. And over.
No, it can't move.
And we could keep going. Okay, the next one I just, all right, basically, when we got to this point here, okay, now I brought in an engineer who was a set designer who had worked at Lockheed. So he started working with Bob Matty. We got serious about building this. This was a metal tube frame. And then Roy Arbogast was building the exterior model and chromoly tubing on the inside, and then Roy came up with all the materials that would would sink and not be absorbed by too much stuff. So we were hoping that we got the exterior and the interior would fit them together and it would work. And everything did work while it was dry. It was when we got here in the salt water that we had a lot of problems. But remember this, 2 years. Bob Matty had 6 months. And I have to always support him. He had 6 months to build it. He had 6 weeks to test it. Now, can you imagine the U.S. Navy having 6 weeks to test something? I mean, you know, it's ludicrous. The ocean is just difficult. Okay, we can move on. I think.
We jump into mechanicals now?
Yeah, I just want to show something here which relates to Martha's Vineyard. Right here, if you could stop this. This is, okay, but you can't stop it, but I'll explain what it is. That was a thing that we would float out. You know, we had a right to left shark and a left to right shark, and they were towed 300 feet from a boat. This one was a shark you could pinpoint. This one could land on the boat, go into the cabin, do all the things. This is actually the apparatus for Jaws 2. We had a director who wanted to expand on it. He got fired. But this is what the Jaws 1 apparatus was. This was float out there, and Bob would flip over these big, giant tubs, and they would sink, and we needed 25 feet, and we had that. Unfortunately, on the testing, it flipped over with all the executives there, and poor Bob. I think that's probably it. I just...
But as you worked on the mechanicals and you kept, you know, making it better and trying to get it to do exactly what you wanted to do, you also realized that you needed some live sharks.
Well, yeah. I just want to hear a shark. That's the armature. Yeah, that's me with my little jacket. That jacket. I gave that jacket to Sherry Rhodes, but I won't go into that story. For Sherry, we love Sherry. Anyway, that's what it looked like in the process. I think we're about. Why so long on me? 1973. I had hair, Jared.
I know,
I
dark
had
too.
hair too. That's Bob Chandler. He did the carving, and he's gone. And that's the shark in clay. And now this is very important. I got this, and if you all have seen the movie, I presume, great shot. Stephen used this. Steinhardt Museum, Oceanographical Institute lent this to us. On the second one, they rented to us at a great cost. And the third one, it cost us a lot more. So it lives. Now, Carl, what was the guy's name? We realized that there was a couple of things that the real shark couldn't do. We couldn't see it really swim away underwater because it had all this stuff. So Ron and Valerie Taylor had made a movie, Blue Water, White Death, and we contacted them to do some underwater stuff. But the biggest shark they could get was 16 feet. So we found a small person.
They hired a midget.
Well, we say small
We said
people.
little person.
Okay.
Little person.
Sorry.
In the world of Hollywood illusion, the notion was, and Zanuck and Brown subscribed to this because they came from Hollywood where everything is for sale, everything is for hire. There's nothing that can't be solved if you throw enough money at it. So they figured they could just hire a shark trainer and train a shark, maybe a couple of sharks, you know, to do what we needed to be done. Turns out there's nobody, there were no shark wranglers to be had. No, nobody would train a shark. So the next best thing is, okay, we'll shoot sharks in their natural habitat. And, well, there's no such thing as a 25-foot. There are, but they're not accessible.
Yeah.
You know, you can't.
16 feet was
you can't go down to Australia and say, you know, sharks, we need a 25-footer. No, you're too small. So the 16-footer would have to do if you got a cage and an actor that were in proportion.
Yes, so we built a small cage.
So they built a small cage
Yes.
and hired a small person
Yes.
to go in there. Carl Rizzo,
But
who was a stuntman who specialized in playing children and doing dangerous stunts.
I built small airplanes.
So Carl Rizzo has a completely perfect scuba outfit with little tiny tanks.
Well, I had to build them support, to be proportionate to.
They were proportionate.
Right.
Everything was in proportion. Except Carl Rizzo has a human being's lungs.
Yes,
After
he
3
breathes
minutes,
normal. That's
He
right.
breathed this normal.
Yeah, that was too bad. He
And
had
after
to
6
breathe.
minutes underwater, there was no more air. So,
And he didn't like that.
and yeah. And then, while he was waiting to go down again,
If he would go
if
down
he
again.
would go down for 6 minutes, they lowered the cage.
Well, we had a breakaway cage
a breakaway.
hanging on the other side of the boat.
Yeah.
And then,
Hollywood magic. You get a breakaway cage, shark breaks it up. Very impressive. They did the real steel cage that Carl is supposed to go in. So they lower it in the water, and a real shark comes along and gets tangled in the bait. And the footage you see in the film is the real shark destroying the cage.
incredible.
Just amazing footage. Ron and Hale and the Valerie show and got the shot, and then and there was, but there's no hooper, there's no human figure in the shot. Now they bring up the cage that was supposed to be steel and protect small Carl Rizzo from the 16-foot great white shark. Carl Rizzo takes one look at this mangled steel cage and is subsequently vanished off the boat. Now they're anchored out in Australia off the Great Barrier Reef or wherever they were shooting the footage. And it's a boat, it's at sea. And there's no Carl Rizzo anywhere to be found. Carl, where are you? And they found him below decks with a pint bottle, a full-size bottle of whiskey, and basically saying, I'm not going back down. If you haven't got the shot now, you don't,
Yeah, but they loved the footage.
But the footage was great.
Loved the footage, but no drivers.
So we wrote the fact that Dreyfus would get battered but escape the cage because we could control that shot. That would be done in a tank in Hollywood.
Right.
And
Which we did.
a lot of people always ask about, what's the fake shark, what's the real shark. The inside secret, if you can see the head and the tail in the same shot, it's a real shark.
Underwater.
Yeah,
Because we did get some
Yeah.
great shots.
The passing shots.
The passing shots were fantastic.
And that's a tribute. And the great thing about the movie is that there was no CGI in it.
That's the difference, because nowadays, they want to see more of the shark, bigger shark, have the shark do this and that, and in a way, it was a great blessing to have it not work.
And the further blessing is the script. Now, I'm hammering away at the script, and I'm realizing as we're going along that the part of Meadows is getting smaller. Now, if there's anything that's more painful for a writer, than for an actor, than writing yourself out of a script as a writer, I was schizophrenically torn. The writer in me wanted to do a good job, tell the story. Economic, be economical. I'm sorry, it's something I have to I wanted to do a good job. But Meadows didn't belong. Anything Meadows said, Larry Vaughn, the mayor, could say just as easily. So I wound up kind of shadowing Murray Hamilton all through the movie, and my part was disappearing. And the shark wouldn't be ready. Can we get the shot of the shark doing this? Not yet. How about the shark doing that? Yeah, not ready. So Stephen and I both had seen a black and white science fiction horror classic called The Thing, later remade by John Carpenter. Now, if you horror film fans will know The Thing. And if you remember, in The Thing, the creature doesn't appear until more than half of the movie is over. And we said, you know what? Since we haven't got a shark, we can shoot the effects of the shark. We can shoot people suffering from the shark. We can show Chrissy's death from above the water, or eye level.
Yes.
We can show the Kintner boy is a masterpiece of editing. There's one moment
And the dog.
when you think there's a shark, but you don't know for sure, and we use the device of the dog. So here we are now writing an ever more suspenseful horror film because we had to. There was no choice.
And so, what better way than to begin production on May 2nd, 1974?
Well, yeah, but the book came out. They knew it was now going to be a successful, book. They were forced to, let's make it this summer so we could show it next summer. Bob Matty should have had more time testing. Poor guy, he was testing and we were shooting as best we can. The barrels, now, I had painted the barrels yellow to complementary of blue water. And they became a character.
Yeah.
They became a very strong character. When they popped up, you knew the shark was there. 1 barrel, 2 barrels. What was it, Carl? You can't keep down with it.
You can't stay down, you can't stay down. Not with 3 barrels.
Yeah. So the barrels became very instrumental. And in the meantime, the effects department was working, 24 hours, not 20, but 12 hours at least, 13 hours, 7 days a week, frantically trying to get something to work.
So, as all of these others are working frantically to get the special effects, all of the other parts of the production going, principal photography began on May 2nd, 1974.
And once a film company starts shooting, there's no turning back.
None.
You can't release half a movie. You have to finish it.
I remember showing up on the first day of shooting, and they were laying track on the beach. And I saw a guy who I'd known for years on the Vineyard, Jonathan Philly, who played Chrissy's boyfriend, who's drunk and falls down when she goes swimming. And we did that whole scene where I find Chrissy's hand. And I was so nervous I could actually probably have thrown up. I tell people, I studied for years to be an actor. I studied for years to throw up like this.
Right.
I was just so nervous. It's the truth. It was such an exciting moment. And as time went by, we shot and we shot and we shot.
Eventually, in films, there's something called a cover set, so that if it rains or some physical obstacle prevents your shooting on a planned location, you go, okay, well, we've got the interior of the office, we can do that, because that's a set, we can build that, we can do it indoors, easily controlled, so we'll do that. Okay, so we'll do the office. Okay, now, well, the dinner scene, okay, that's controlled, that's indoors.
That was already done.
But that's been done. And one by one, we shot every piece of dialogue that there was, except for the 3 guys on the boat, in the water, in the ocean.
And I was talking to Bill Gilmore a couple of minutes ago, and we were reviewing this. He said Stephen came to him. Bill was the production manager and did all the scheduling. Stephen said, I've shot everything. What do we do? Bill said, we go out there and wait. And we did. And the shark came up, and Scheider's chumming, and the shark came up, and everybody was like, oh my God, it worked. And he turns around and says, we need a bigger boat. And that was the first shot. That actually
the first shot
worked.
of the shark
And it
worked.
still gets people,
And interestingly enough, the production track, which is recorded simultaneously with the action, on film, you hear the operation of the shark. You hear guys shouting,
and sounds, gurgling sounds.
And the shark is operated by pneumatic tubes. You couldn't
Right.
use electricity in the water, so everything is pneumatic. So for every motion of the shark, each eye, the jaws opening and closing, everything had its own separate set of airlines and
often
return.
referred to as shark farts.
Well,
And when the shark comes up,
Yeah.
and it startles you, it startled the editors, it startled the guys in the lab, and you go, how can it startle anybody? You can hear guys
Yeah, and
shouting,
everybody-
You know, we live in an age where the Avengers and Batman and all of these CGIs, when there was a sailboat in the back of a scene, you just had to wait till it passed.
Yeah, we couldn't blip it out. There's
Yeah,
no,
But
Can't paint
even
it out.
Chrissy's harness you might talk about for a minute, because you talk about special effects and whatever.
oh, that was so high tech.
Susan,
So high tech. We put a little harness on her, and I happened to be on the beat, and we had 2 pylons. Chrissy, and then we had a rope and a sieve, and we had 3 guys here on the rope and 3 guys there. I happened to be there, so I got on the rope. And Stephen would say, to the left, and we'd all run up the beach, and there would go Chrissy. To the right, and there'd go Chrissy. And it was really high tech. And
And of course, if of the 6 guys, if 3 guys on one side and 3 guys on the other side ran in opposite directions at the same time, they would have ripped
we're in half. Or
Susan
so
in half. I mean, there's a reason we got a stunt woman for the part.
Susan, you hurt your back, didn't you?
No.
Oh, you did.
But she did an incredible job. She was so. But anyway, there was also some funny stuff too that was going on. Roy Arbogast, who did all the physical shark teeth. We had removable teeth if it was going to bite somebody, like Quint. We had the rubber teeth, and then we had the hard teeth. And Roy came to me and said, I don't know what's happening. My teeth are missing. I made all these damn teeth, and they're missing. We found out the guys were stealing the teeth so they could pick up girls at the bar. I got a real shark tooth from Jaws. Not very nice.
So for all of you collectors
Yeah.
who paid a lot of money for shark teeth,
Well,
know that they were put to good use by somebody somewhere on the island.
and there were fun stories. I mean, you heard about Quint's shack, but how about putting the billboard up for a day in Bay Head?
Yeah.
You were only allowed 1 day.
Brian De Palma's girlfriend. That's who posted that.
Yes.
Yes. And she was a little insulted by it. But Brian and Steven said you got to post for it, so we did.
Lori Metcalf?
I don't know. I don't remember her name. You probably remember her name.
Well,
But,
you know, she's an actress.
Yeah.
She worked after that.
but 1 day, yeah. We had to put it up, take it down, and things like that.
Because there were a lot of local problems. The restrictions were tough. Then there were a lot of local characters. It was Craig Kingsbury, who my mother remembers walking barefoot in the winter here.
Craig Kingsbury, when we met him and talked to him, Stephen said to me, he said, hang out with this guy. He sounds like Quint. So I hung out with Craig, and in some cases, I would just listen to him and write it down in a little notebook, and then Robert Shaw would say it later to you about some of Quint's dialogue is right out of the mouth of Craig Kingsbury, whose daughter Kristen Henshaw Kingsbury